So it's my great pleasure to get to introduce our next panel and then to engage in a conversation with them. And I have to say that the energy backstage as we were talking was so great, and I hope it infects the whole room as we talk about the issues we will. Let me just introduce the three of you really quickly. Kaylah Brathwaite is the 18-year-old Director of Operations and Logistics at Zero Hour, a grassroots climate organization intent on gaining support for the youth climate movement. She currently lives in North Carolina and was raised in St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands. She works with the Sunrise Movement's Charlotte, North Carolina hub and helped organize the Youth Summit Conference in Miami, Florida just a few months ago. She has written about the immediate effects of climate change and how frontline youth are not only fighting for their futures, but for their lives right now. Elsa Mengistu is the former, yes.
Thank you.
Elsa Mengistu is the former Director of Operations and Logistics and currently is an Operations Coordinator at Zero Hour. She is a freshman at Howard University and native of North Carolina by passage of Ethiopia. She is an avid organizer and activist who started her work in middle school and high school. She has advocated for change on various issues, including electoral politics, racial justice, LGBTQ+ equality, and women's rights through local organizations and school clubs. She has also worked on gun violence prevention and was one of the lead youth organizers for her local March for Our Lives chapter. In 2019, she was named as one of GRIST's 50 Fixers, a group of up-and-coming individuals working on innovative solutions to fix the biggest challenges that face our globe. Another round of applause. And then Leandra Mira has been leading Fridays for Future in Pittsburgh. This is the movement founded by the 16-year-old Greta Thunberg. Leandra has been at the City County building each Friday since last August to protest climate issues. She is also the leading organizer of the Pittsburgh's Climate Youth Strike in September 2019. You know, so what immediately strikes me, it actually occurred to me backstage, but what immediately strikes me reading your bios is I'm exhausted just reading what you're doing, let alone what you're doing. So it's a pleasure. I mean, you're absolutely the three right people to have this conversation with. But let's start with why you're doing this. So what is it that makes you motivated to get involved in the climate issue in the first place? And we're going to try and manage this as a conversation, but let's go down the line first, and then we'll shake it up a bit.
Sweet. So I think the reason I'm in here is because of fear, mostly. Fear that like our world will collapse if we decide to not act right now. Frontline youth are facing the catastrophic effects of climate change right now. And so I think it'd just be very irresponsible of me and very ignorant and almost disrespectful to not use this platform that I have, that I've been given, to act. So yes, fear and a need to help others.
Yeah, I'd say because fighting for climate justice is fighting for human rights. Black rights, LGBT rights, women's rights, voting rights, gun violence. It doesn't make sense, but it also is intertwined with climate change and how human interactions kind of play into that. There's just such a magnitude of so many issues that are impacted by climate change. If I want to solve one issue, I have to kind of address them all through climate justice, and that's kind of why I'm invested in it.
I mean, they covered it so amazing. For me, it was actually learning about local issues in Western PA. So learning about our air quality, which makes us more likely to get cancer, strokes, heart attacks, and the list goes on. Learning about communities in Pittsburgh that have lead in their water, and other things affecting so many communities, like a 40-minute drive from me that I never knew about. And I just thought, how can I not use my body and presence and voice that I have that some people don't, to fight for them and fight for me and fight for the kids at my school. So yeah.
So, you know, it's so easy to intellectualize this issue, and I really want to push the three of you on the feelings that you have about this set of issues right now. It's easy to be depressed, it's easy to be angry, and maybe it's important to be both of those. It's also important to be hopeful, and we'll talk about all of that. But I'm curious, for any of the three of you, does this feel personal? Does the issue of climate change somehow arise in your lives in a way that it feels personal to you?
For me, definitely. I'm from the U.S. Virgin Islands, which is a frontline community. We have been facing increasingly more dangerous hurricanes, more now than before. And so when I think about the climate crisis and why I'm in here, it's constantly just me thinking of people back home and when I used to live there. And when I think about my favorite sacred places, so to speak, those places are either not there because of hurricanes or any other changing weather patterns, or tourism or the oil refinery that's there. And those places are not there, and that definitely weighs on me a lot. And sometimes I do try to distance myself from it because it's a bit incapacitating to have to think of my home being destroyed and also me fighting for the world. So it is personal, and it's a lot.
Yeah, and for me at least, I'm not a frontline youth. I don't have such a personal connection to it, but the fact is we are fighting for our lives. I may not feel the impacts of climate change right now, and that is because unfortunately I have privilege in where I am in my life right now, and so I have not, a lot of everyone in this room does. We live in the United States. We emit so much carbon into the air, but we will be the last people to really feel the effects compared to the rest of the world. And so in that sense, it isn't personal, but in the sense that I'm 18 years old and my future could literally just be cut in half by a crisis I didn't create. That's very personal. And it's personal for communities like Kaylah, that the community she's part of, and the communities that I'm part of. And so it's personal in that sense, and it's personal in the sense that I'm 18 and I don't know what my future is going to look like. And that really stings, but.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Elsa. I don't necessarily live in a frontline community, but I also think that that's kind of the vocabulary of climate change, which is how are you being affected by the effects, that was a bad sentence, but what effects are you feeling of climate change? Whereas for me, what I'm feeling are the causes of climate change. So that fossil fuel extraction, the fracking, the emissions in the air that, like I said, cause so many, really are causing a public health crisis in our state. So I don't necessarily feel the effects of climate change, but I am feeling the effects of the causes of climate change, if that makes any sense.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. You know, I'm curious, a couple of times in what you've just said already, you referred to the platform that you've been given. Interestingly, I don't view it as the platform you've been given. I view it as the platform you've taken. You know, you've decided to occupy this space of activism and speaking out, and to use that opportunity to raise the voice that you do. It requires some discipline to show up and some fortitude to show up every day on the steps of the city-county building and say, hey, here's what I stand for and what I believe. I'm curious, just generally, how have the adults, the older adults that you've encountered in your life, reacted to your activism? Have they been supportive? And how have they reacted to the issue particularly? I know when I was 18 and raising my voice about issues, what I often heard from adults older than me was, well, you don't understand, kid. I'm wondering if you still encounter that, and so just run with that for a minute.
I've had a lot of different reactions to me sitting on the steps every Friday. And in your bio, you said since August. It's actually been since May 31st.
Ah.
So it's going to be 6 months in about a week. So for me, one of them is you should be in school to be learning how to become an environmental scientist and then combat the issue, which is my favorite because by the time I graduate college, it'll be too late to combat the issue. But a lot of it is really great support, and I also have noticed that a lot of adults are beginning to feel a lot of guilt, which I actually don't necessarily want, because I think that that continues this idea that as individuals, we all are at fault for this crisis, when 70% of global emissions are caused by the top 100 corporations. We're not at fault for this. I mean, maybe 20 years ago, adults could have protested like we are now, but at some point, there would have had to have been a sort of revolution of people saying this practice in society needs to stop. So it's not necessarily that I want guilt or even pats on the back of like, you're doing such amazing work, because I want people to see what I say and then go and do amazing work with their own platforms, and the fact that they can vote, and the fact that they can, a lot of them are elected officials who can implement plans and goals. I want them to take what they see and then do it themselves. So yeah.
Yeah, working at 0 Hour, about when 0 Hour was initially starting, we started off by hosting the first ever Youth Global Climate March, and that takes money to fundraise, and it takes supporters to kind of create, and we had a lot of adult allies, but it's more so adults saying, thank you for your work, I've given up on my generation, or you're doing such great work, here's a pat on the back. We don't need that. We didn't start this so you can congratulate us on what we're doing. I don't care. What I need is for you in your own generation to combat the climate crisis with us. And I, as an organizer, I haven't faced opposition from adults, just blanket approval. And that's really frustrating because I don't need approval, I don't need congratulations, I need support. We need support to solve this issue. And that's what our relationship with adults have been, at least working at 0 Hour, and it's just frustrating slightly.
And it is really interesting because like both of our generations, either like our generation, our parents' generations, like we have not seen revolution or like revolutionary action on the scale that is needed to solve the climate crisis. And like if we just have blanket approval from a generation without any action, like we cannot solve it in a way that like will ensure that we have clean air, clean water, a livable future essentially. So there's that. There are like adults calling us puppets on Twitter sometimes.
That's my favorite, actually.
It is.
I think that's my favorite because to be puppets, they're kind of insinuating we're a part of a conspiracy, and who are we making money for? Like, what conspiracy are we a part of? Like, I'm not getting hundreds of thousands of dollars. What money am I getting? So it's kind of like really, really funny to see, because we're going against one of the richest industries on the planet. So it's absurd, but yeah.
Well, so I love the fact that you all three touched on this idea of the sort of condescending approval that you have to deal with, and the non-committal support, the "it's on you, kid, make it better now" sort of reaction. But I want to push further on what is the message then, because so much of what we hear in individual dialogue about this is about individual actions that you can walk away and take. So you can eat less meat, you can fly fewer trips on an airplane, you can make modest changes in your lifestyle. But I think what I sense is shifting among youth today is a very different message that is about bold societal-wide action. And I'd love to hear, what is your message around that? What do you want? You have a room full of, I think we have a third of the room is folks who are probably in your general age category, and then there are a bunch of me out there. So what do you want us to know? What do you want all of us to know?
I think there's an overemphasis on individual action in this climate movement. There's no other issue that I talk about where we would be like, hey, maybe if you got a, I don't know,
when we talk about gun violence, we don't say, hey, get rid of your gun. We say,
Yeah,
hey,
exactly.
let's get rid of automatic rifles, etc.
Yeah, because it's a systemic issue. I'm sorry for cutting you off. It's a systemic issue that requires systemic change. And to do that, we need all of us together, building this movement, base building, all of us doing something. Of course, your pattern of consumption either hurts the environment or helps restore our earth. I do want to acknowledge that. But using reusable straws and buying the new eco-friendly product out there is not doing anything to help us put in policies or that will help us in the long run.
Elsa, you started to speak.
Yeah, I would like to say no one in this room is at fault for the climate crisis. Not a single person in this room created the climate crisis. When Leandra said the top 100 corporations are responsible for about 70% of carbon emissions, that isn't by coincidence. That isn't by you eating meat every other day. It isn't you driving your car. It isn't you not recycling. It is the fact that there are a select few individuals that have changed the course of history to the point where we are on the brink of extinction. And none of that can be reversed by individual actions, but rather large-scale changes. And so none of you are at fault. No one is at fault. All we can do is radically change the world we live in at the point we are in right now, because that's the only option we have left.
I would say the importance of individual actions is that it can be a way to disrupt the system or make a statement. So if all of us in this room stop driving our cars and we all live in this general area, then the industry would say, okay, this one area in the nation is not buying as much gas as they used to. But they'd keep going on as they do. So it's partially having individual actions, but then it's so much more putting pressure on our elected officials who are supposed to work for us and what we want in our health, and also taking to the streets and marching with us and supporting us. Earlier, I forget which one of you said, that we actually want older generations to be with us. It's not so much young versus old, and that's something that I think about all the time, is that if we had every single person from any age group, it would be unstoppable. But yeah, so the one takeaway I want you to have when you leave is that you can be a part of this movement too, no matter what you look like, what age you are. Just do it and research your local groups and support them. Yeah.
I just want to emphasize what you said. If we have an intersectional movement that is multiracial, multi-generational, socioeconomic class, that is unstoppable. If we can unite people beyond creeds and age and all the things I just mentioned, we could solve this. And I think we sometimes underestimate the power that working class people, Black people, Indigenous people that we have. And if we use that and listen to people, we could save our earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go with, did you want to add?
I just wanted to add, it's a very Gen Z thing, but I always think of the Area 51 raid and how they were if we have everyone, they can't stop us. And I remember seeing that and being imagine if people thought that about the climate movement. And we're like, if we all took the streets, they wouldn't be able to stop us, instead of wanting to find aliens. But I guess that's just we have different goals. But yeah.
I think that's the second time that aliens have been invoked at this conference, by the way.
Aliens, climate change, it's very hand in hand.
So, since we're on the subject of intersectionality and frontline communities, several of you have used the phrase frontline communities. I'm curious how you see your movement intersecting with the movements of frontline communities like Indigenous water protectors. And are the voices of these various movements amplifying each other, do you think?
The reason I joined Zero Hour, up until this point, I worked on gun violence prevention, and I was scrolling on Facebook one day, and I came across Zero Hour, and it was this badass group of youth just organizing, and I was like really intrigued. But one thing that really drew me in is that they spoke about the humanity of the climate crisis, the people it impacts, the stories behind it. It spoke about people that looked like me, that looked like Kaylah, that looked like Leandra. It spoke about the human crises that are being further worsened by climate crisis. And that means that we have to address communities that are going to be impacted by climate change first and foremost. And so I wouldn't say our work intersects with them, but like our work is the work that water protectors are doing. We were inspired by water protectors. Water protectors are this movement. I was inspired by criminal justice reformists. The work that they're doing intersects with the work I'm doing. We are one in one. And so while we use the term intersects, I really just see it as an overlay. Our work is one and the same.
There was a part about the Louisiana Cancer Alleys activist that we talked about backstage, and I would love for Leandra to share that.
Ooh, okay. So what she's mentioning is that in one of the questions, it talks about the Cancer Alley in Louisiana. Do you want us to wait for you to ask that question?
No, you just asked it.
Okay.
So.
We saw the paper backstage.
Perfect.
We were cheating.
Now they know.
I'm flustered now. So what I tied it to was that in Western PA, our politicians want to turn us into a plastic production hub. So we have ethane cracker plants popping up. We actually have the largest ethane cracker plant in North America being built right now in Beaver County by Shell. And then with that means that we're going to be building more pipelines attached to it, because an ethane cracker plant is natural gas from fracking that goes to an ethane cracker plant. They take the ethane, they heat it up, and then they crack the bonds, and then they get ethylene, and then they make plastic. So did you all get that? Say yeah. So in Louisiana, they started having all these factories pop up, and they actually termed a part of Louisiana Cancer Alley, because so many people started developing cancer after that plant, or all of the plants started going into production. So right now, what I'm working on mostly is focusing on that devastating problem, like 50 miles from me, and trying to stop it. But yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, because like essentially, like a lot of the work we do, like is supporting those communities, and not necessarily like going into them and being like, hey, we have all the resources, let's give it to you so you can use your voice, because they already have a voice, they already know what their community needs, and they just need that amplified. So like, we can do that, or we can do what they need us to do for them to be successful in their movement. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
really
one of the most important things you can do is just tell someone, I'm behind you.
Yes.
I'll support you, and I'll show up. If I can't show up, I'll help in any way. That can be just as powerful as going in, or more powerful than going in and using your voice over theirs.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So this wasn't a question you'd planned on, but it comes up because you all have kind of alluded to this, and it actually goes back to the aliens. So,
Ooh, okay.
so there's kind of a playbook here, and I love the mention of the experience that we have around guns and gun violence in our country as kind of a template because it illustrates the comparison. So in the wake of Parkland, what immediately began to happen is online trolls and people who back them started to say, well, that never happened, kind of like they did after Sandy Hook. And then they started positioning the Parkland kids as shills for someone, puppets for...
Yeah.
George Soros.
Some
Still haven't
entity.
figured out who.
Some
Yeah.
entity.
Still haven't figured out who.
Someone.
But so same playbook in climate change, that it's not really happening. The phenomenon doesn't exist. And the people who are advocating for it, well, they're either ignorant or shills for someone. They're fronting for someone. They're puppets of someone. How, for folks like me, I find myself just sputtering over that because it's like, well, wait, science, but and people don't. It doesn't break through to them. How do you handle that phenomenon of just being questioned out of existence and being told you don't know what you're talking about?
I don't. It's not my business. We don't have time to argue. Like, we have a set amount of time to do what we need to do to make sure we have a livable earth. And I cannot sit on Twitter and argue back and forth with someone. And I know there's like a larger mentality behind it, but we have a whole population of people that want to be mobilized. We have a whole population of people that have not been mobilized yet that we can tap into. There's just such a small, minute force of people that make conspiracy theories about the climate crisis and about mass shootings that they don't deserve our attention. My attention is always going to be on the communities that are impacted by climate crisis. It's never going to be a troll on Twitter, on Instagram, behind a meme, because I'm not in this fight for them. I'm in this fight for our lives.
Yeah, exactly. I don't
Kinda says it.
respond. My mom will like bring it up to me because she knows my Twitter apparently. And I'll be like, Mom, I saw that, laughed at it, like, girl, don't even look at it. But essentially it's like we need to have 3.5% of our population on the streets or acting in this movement. And David mentioned earlier how about like 25% of our population like does not believe in climate change. I mean, I want them to believe in it, I want them to act on it, but ultimately like that 70% is like who I want to activate and who I want to engage, because if we need 10 million people in this movement, like that's what I'm trying to like get onto the streets.
Kaylah's referring to 3.5% is a theory of change on how we change the world. We only need 3.5% of the world to be constantly on our throats in the streets actively fighting for change. But one phrase that I like to use is get in or get out. Get into this movement or get out, like get out of our way. Like this movement is coming regardless of whatever you want to say and do. We're here in this moment. And we're not going to stop for naysayers or people that want to, I don't know.
Yeah, they said it so well, and I actually have a rule that I won't get into discussion or disagreement with someone who's determined to disagree with me. So if they're coming into it just to like make aha, like I'm not going to get into it. But if it's someone who genuinely doesn't know the facts, but they're like, how does this affect me? How does this affect my family? I'll gladly like take the moment to have a conversation with them. Sometimes it gets to a point where I'm like, you can Google it, and I'm not your teacher. But I also think that a lot of our politicians do believe that it's real. They just know that the longer that they say, we need more evidence, we need more research, the longer they're going to continue to profit off of the destruction of our planet. So I think that I actually don't really believe them when they say that they don't believe that it's real. I just think that they're trying to make a couple more years, and yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. So much of the climate conversation that we hear is doom and gloom, and it's easy to get caught up in that. I think one of the unfair things that older generations always do to the younger generations is saddle them with responsibility for carrying hope. But I'm going to ask you the question anyway, in the midst of all of the doom and gloom. What gives you the hope to fight and carry on?
I think my answer is short because like being an organizer is really like mentally draining. So there is a lot of doom and gloom personally, but I find hope in the people in this movement beside me, whether they've been organizers for years or have been just starting out. I've only been an organizer for a year, like just for reference. And like getting people who don't know anything about like the intersectionality of the movement or any like social institutions that have caused it, but are just like, I'm scared because the world is ending and I want to do something. Like that inspires me and that gives me hope.
My short answer is that I actually don't have hope, but it's very freeing for me. It's not depressing. It's sort of just like, if in 15 years I don't have access to food or water and I die, then if I sat on the couch all the time, it wouldn't have mattered either. So just strike with everyone, and that's really it. As bad as that.
Trying.
Yeah, exactly. We're going out like having a good time, but it's not really a good time because it's so mentally draining, like you said. But yeah, that's my really bad philosophy for it.
Yeah, it's valid.
It is. I shut off like my brain and like my emotion when I work on issues, just because it'll tug at you, and organizing will take everything from you if you let it. And so having hope, like she said, like I have it, but I don't know. We're literally on the brink of extinction. Like, am I supposed to be hopeful? I don't know.
Yeah, and when you think about hope too, you start to think about the permafrost melting and how there's so many things that once it just happens, we can't stop it. Like once it happens, we're done. And it just starts a cycle that, so it's, the hope is,
but also,
then your brain starts, like you said.
But also like climate anxiety and climate hope and optimism and climate fear are they're just two different sides of the same coin. And they give us, if we feed into them, they give us the same thing. They give us no results. And so I just keep doing the work as I do it, and I look at movements to inspire myself. Look at Chile right now, look at Hong Kong. People are in the streets fighting for their lives. And I can feel that energy, and the people's power is the only power that we need, and so that's like the one thing that I feed off of, as depressing as all the work we do is. People power, that's what motivates me.
It sounds almost as though a better word for the three of you in terms of addressing this issue and others that you see in your lives is purpose rather than hope. Is that fair?
Yeah,
That's really good.
Yeah.
So let's think about the dialogue that we see in the media, the dialogue that we see, through whatever media, that we might be getting our news through. And I'm thinking about just a few weeks ago, we were treated to the spectacle of a Democratic presidential debate in which, over the course of 3 hours, not a single question was asked about the climate or the environment. And there has been a general resistance to the notion of having a debate targeted to climate at all. And I'm curious, what do you think is driving that, even in the traditional media, that there's a reluctance to ask questions about this issue? Or is that a fair characterization in your mind?
I think it is. How many times have you seen the media go ham for war? How many times have you seen the media be warmongers? How many times have you seen the media ramp up issues that have no relevance to our daily lives every day? But we are literally going to die. Like, human civilization is on the brink of never existing again, and How many times do we get a headline about this? Never. How many times does media fail to connect the dots between hurricanes and floods and wildfires and everything that's going on all over the world? How many times do you see them connect local things happening to other local things and just connect it to climate change or climate crisis? Never. And they're entirely missing the boat on it. And I mean, I have some theories as to why, but they are. And it's, I don't know what to say of it, because this is a time-changing moment, forever altering. And turn on the news, you're not going to hear about it as much as you should. This should be on our news every day, on our radios, on our podcasts, in our movies, and it's not.
Yeah, I want to say I love you. I don't want to give you congratulations like we just said was annoying, but I feel the exact same way where I turn on the TV and I can't watch it. As much as I hate Trump, and I don't even want to talk about him, I can't stand how the media loves talking about him all the time. He'll say something dumb, and it's like, we know he says dumb stuff. Why do I need to see it on the front page of whatever? Let me hear about the science. Let me hear about climate change. Let me hear about the communities that are moving right now, island nations that are moving right now, places that don't have water right now. Let me hear about that. Like you said, we are going to die. I don't think people really get that. It's not 50 years from now. People are dying now. They're going to die in 5 years. They're going to die in 10 years. It's happening now. It's frustrating.
There's this quote, I'm going to paraphrase by Malcolm X. If you're not careful, the media will have you loving the oppressor and hating the oppressed, something like that.
That's a quote.
Yeah, and when it comes to climate change, that's literally what's happening. I think that's just really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you guys summed it up very well. And I'll just close it off with the media is doing a great disservice by not amplifying the people who are being affected by it right now or who are fighting for it right now, and choosing to highlight a few individuals who are doing really great work, but also get off of that news cycle a day after. Anytime I want to learn about this crisis, I have to intentionally look for it on the internet, and then even then it's just a ton of articles being some people think climate change is fake, and I'm like, girl, I just want to see the facts because I'm trying to learn.
Yeah.
Why is that the pinnacle of our discussion? Why are we still debating, is climate change a thing? No. Let's debate what solutions we're going to have to climate crisis, not is this real? It's in our face. We know it's real. I see it. We all see it every day. Why is the media still 30 years behind? This isn't a theory. This is fact.
It's like anti-vaxxers.
Yeah. We have roughly 11 years until we set off irreversible feedback loops that will eventually collapse our planet. Just let that sink in.
Yeah, and every year, I feel scientists say that it's actually going to happen sooner. I remember seeing an article
5 years.
or a study, and it was if we don't start action right now in the next 18 months, we'll never reach the 10-year goal. Yes. And it's just, I'm having an existential crisis on stage.
Because essentially, I do want to explain that. It's from the IPCC report saying that if politicians don't create policy plans that are ready to go by the end of 18 months, that 10 months a year thing,
won't happen.
We have little to no chance of making that. And so that's just because politicians tend to make plans in terms of 5 years or 10-year plans. So that's why we have the 18 months thing. It's very y'all are gonna die unless we get really cool, amazing, revolutionary people into office who can implement revolutionary climate policies next year.
Yeah.
Because
so vote and canvas.
Vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is probably a good moment to interject the next question, which is, what do you say to people who, listening to you, say, well, you're overstating the science, it's not that dramatic, the things you're calling for are too radical, they're too extremist, they'll be too expensive, we can't possibly do them. How do you respond to that?
The first thing I say is, why are you opposed to clean air, clean water, and clean soil? That's the very first thing I say. And I say, if you really think climate change isn't real, why do you still not want clean air and clean water for your kids right now? And usually, then they're like, oh, okay, yeah. And so it's, yeah, that's usually.
So you draw the connection to something that they should appreciate more immediately and right now.
Yeah, because it's all tied together. Like earlier, I think Elsa said climate change was something that I got involved in because of how it intersects or overlaps with pretty much every issue on the planet. And so that's what I try to do is when they say you're overstating the science, all that stuff, I immediately start drawing not comparisons, but links between the causes of climate change to public health crises, to destructive weather patterns and things like that, and then usually it begins to change, but yeah.
Is the question, you go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So I think I have these conversations with people at school because, like, I'm, like, big on climate now. And so essentially, like, sometimes you want to have this conversation where you kind of, like, no, that's not the word I'm looking for. Sprinkle, like, climate policies talks, like, to certain people. But also, on the other hand, it's, like, moderation and incremental change like will not fix this. We are 11 years away from irreversible like effects of it. And so if we wanted to have incremental change, that should have already been happening. And so, yeah, I might be a little extreme because this is an extreme issue we're facing. We are facing the most existential threat to our generations than we have ever faced. And so if you don't understand that we need radical revolutionary policies and a mass movement to fight that, then I don't understand like what you want me to say or do to you.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Elsa, you were gonna.
I'd laugh. I really would. because to say that solving climate crisis is too expensive, come on, man. The climate crisis itself is going to be too expensive.
Yeah.
I can't wrap my head around it. We raise money. We have money for so many things, but when it comes to what we don't have is the priority and the will. We have the money to solve the climate crisis. We have it. We have the science. We have the solutions. What we don't have is the will. It's not too expensive. It's literally the only thing we can do. We waited so long to react to everything that's going on that it's going to cost us this much. And when we could have took incremental change 30 years ago, 40 years ago, but we have 18 months to do what we have to do. And so the price tag doesn't matter at this point.
Yeah. The price tag does not matter at this point. Just want to emphasize that. People over profits. If you like actually care about money and things of those nature over like the lives of people, then we're not even in the same ballpark, my friend.
Yeah.
Time's up. Like,
I'm gonna be corny for a second and say this is your hour to do anything. So that's that on that. Like.
Yeah, we have so much money for the military, but if another country was poisoning our water, poisoning our air, we'd go to war. That would be terrorism. But they allow the industry to do it to us because they pay off our politicians. So.
Oh,
yeah.
oh yeah.
I mean, in like my own city in Charlotte, like our environmental committee was disbanded not recently, and so like we're trying to get that restored, but it's like we are moving backwards into very dangerous territory, and I literally just need everybody to be engaged in this, because if you don't know how this like crisis will affect you right now, like you're gonna know sooner than later. So like, yeah, stop trying to be moderate in this crisis, because we're gonna die.
So this next one, Leandra, is primarily for you, but I'd love everybody's opinion if they have one. But you've been working in Pittsburgh. You're focused on Pittsburgh. How do you see this movement taking shape in Western Pennsylvania? And is there anything that surprised you about the work you're doing?
I would say what surprised me is that not a lot of people are aware of how personally they're affected. I wasn't aware. I was very, very sheltered. And it wasn't until last spring, about a month before I began striking, that I found out that I'm 2 times more likely to get cancer. I'm more likely, like I said earlier, to get strokes, heart disease, lung disease. There's rare forms of cancer popping up all over Washington County. I think there's multiple students in the same high school with the same rare cancer. It's Ewing sarcoma. And we have 200 cases in the US every year. And then I think we had 6 cases in Washington County about 2 years ago. So that's like a cluster. So when I began learning about all of that, that was what motivated me. And so that was the thing that surprised me, was that not many people knew. And the way that I see it taking shape in Western PA probably would be that through raising awareness, people will begin, hopefully, to take action as I have and put pressure on their local communities. But like I said earlier, I don't have much hope. I actually, the past 2 weeks, have been sitting on the steps with like 4 people. So it's not a big, earlier Kaylah said activism can be very draining, and it is. Because it's not, you see Greta Thunberg, who I love, but you see her and you see all of the congratulations, all of the awards, but that's not the reality of activism at all. It can be really rewarding when you accomplish one of your own personal goals, but usually you will not have someone like present you the Nobel Prize. That's just the reality of the situation. So right now I'm in the transition of trying to gain hope for Western PA. I would love it if we banned fracking in Pennsylvania. We need to, yeah. Everyone that clapped is now legally obligated to join me. I'm serious, I can see all of you. But, yeah, so right now it's sort of me envisioning what I want, and then there's the voice that's like, this isn't impossible, you won't be able to do this, but I try not to set my goals for what I can do or I can't do, because for the 20th, which was our climate strike, I was expecting a crowd of 50 people and we had over 1,000. So now I'm like, you can do anything, which is, yeah. So, yeah, I don't know how I envision it. Just smile through the pain. It's fine. But yeah.
I love that.
All right, we're running out of time, so I'm going to give you each an opportunity to take us out with your parting message, what you want to leave us all with.
Cool. Make the spaces that you organize in accessible to you to build this movement in the way that it needs to be built.
I'd say if you're an adult in this room, don't be an ally, be an accomplice. This movement takes funding, it takes resources, it takes connections, it takes validation, it takes support, it takes thousands and millions of people. We need you guys to stand up in solidarity with us. Speak up for us in rooms that we can't get access to, get us into rooms that we can access, come to the marches we're organizing, stand with us, and our movement will prosper.
I mean, retweet, make spaces, and everything Elsa said. And I'll say this is kind of random. This doesn't have a lot to do with climate change, but a lot of the events that I go to don't have a sign language translator. And that's making the space for people who, might not be able to go if there's no translator. So I'll say this. Start having your spaces be more inclusive for everyone. Vote, canvass, volunteer. Yeah, like if you live in Pittsburgh, there's a garden. I think it's the Black Urban Gardeners Society. They don't have volunteers right now, and they're in harvest. So go help out. Yeah, that's it.
So, Kaylah, Elsa, and Leandra, maybe you wrestle with hope, but you sure gave a lot. So thank you very much, and really appreciate your perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.